Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really fascinating piece of text on our stack today. It's an excerpt from a devotional, Rhapsody of Realities by Pastor Chris, and it dives headfirst into a pretty foundational topic.
Absolutely. It's something people, across different traditions have really wrestled with for centuries.
Mm,
These ideas of holiness and righteousness.
right. And this source, well, it takes a perspective that you might find a little surprising, especially if maybe you've grown up thinking about these concepts in a more, let's say, traditional religious way.
Hmm.
It really seems to challenge the notion that righteousness and holiness are states you sort of work towards, or, qualities you try to achieve through your own effort.
Yeah, and so our mission today is really to explore this specific viewpoint, the one presented right here in this devotional. What does this text actually say about holiness and righteousness? And maybe more importantly, what does it suggest this means for our very identity?
Okay, yeah, let's unpack this. So the source kicks things off by suggesting that, well, in its view, many have kind of missed the mark.
Yeah, miss the mark when it comes to understanding holiness and righteousness properly.
Right.
It pinpoints this common belief it sees as the wrong idea, basically.
Right.
The idea that no one can truly be holy or, actually live a holy life.
But then it pivots pretty dramatically, actually. It draws directly from a verse in Ephesians, chapter 4, verse 24.
Hmm.
And this source quotes it to say that according to the Bible, when you are born again, you are actually created in righteousness and true holiness.
That's a powerful starting point, isn't it? The source really emphasizes this isn't something you do after you're reborn.
Right.
It's presented as what happens at rebirth. It states it very clearly. You are holy and you are righteous, period.
So when this devotional talks about holiness, it's defining it in a way that, well, according to this text, it has nothing to do with your actions, like what you do.
Right. Instead, it says it's entirely about who you are and maybe where you are, spiritually speaking.
Not just
And what's interesting is how the source frames this. It argues that only someone who is already holy can actually live holy. You can't practice holiness as a way to become holy.
right. The author goes even further, suggesting that if becoming holy was just a matter of practicing it or trying really hard,
Uh-huh.
then from this perspective, there wouldn't have been any need for Jesus' sacrifice in the first place.
And the source says the exact same principle applies when it talks about righteousness. It basically posits that you first have to be righteous. Only then can you actually live a righteous life.
So how does it say that happens? How do you get righteous?
Well, it explains that at what it calls the new birth, God actually imparts his nature of righteousness right into a person's spirit.
Okay.
Right? So the definition of righteousness here isn't, a checklist of right actions. According to the source, it's a nature.
Nature.
Yeah, an inherent quality. And living a right life, that's just the result or maybe the expression of that nature you now have.
The source uses a simple analogy, doesn't it, to make this point?
It does. It says a dog barks because, well, it's a dog. That's just its nature.
Okay. Makes sense.
And by the same logic, the text argues, a sinner, someone whose nature is described as sin, they cannot live a consistently righteous life because that's simply not their nature.
Therefore, in this devotional's view, if you want to live a righteous life, you first need to be made the righteousness of God.
Exactly.
And it connects this right back to being born again. That's the moment it says it happens.
And it quotes 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 21 to back this up, where it says, "For he hath made him to be sin for us who knew no sin, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him." It presents this as the moment one receives this new nature. You become God's righteousness in him.
So this perspective highlights a really strong contrast then.
Definitely.
The source argues that righteousness is fundamentally not something you attain, not through effort, not through struggle.
Right. And it suggests that many people do struggle with this precisely because they lack maybe an accurate understanding of what the Bible, from this source's viewpoint, actually teaches about it.
And this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Brings up Romans chapter 5, verse 17, stating that righteousness is explicitly called the gift of God.
A gift. Yeah, and elaborating on that, the author defines this gift not just as a legal status, but as a nature.
Okay.
It's described as that nature or life of God that's imparted to you.
Yeah.
And that nature then produces in you the very ability to do what is right.
And according to this devotional, grasping this concept is, well, essential.
Yeah.
Absolutely crucial.
Yeah, it claims that until you truly understand this idea, righteousness as a gifted nature, you'll probably find yourself struggling, repeating the same struggles in your spiritual journey.
Which connects back to a broader point the source makes. This understanding is presented as a key reason why the author says Christianity is not, in its essence, a religion like other religions.
Right. It contrasts this view pretty sharply with what it describes as, the religions of the world.
Where the focus is maybe on people trying to be holy.
Exactly. Or struggling to become righteous through, adhering to rules or performing certain practices.
Okay.
And the source wraps up this line of thought by stating that, from its perspective, in Christianity, righteousness and holiness, they aren't goals you achieve through effort. They are presented as our inherent nature.
Our nature.
The view is that you were born righteous and holy, and therefore you are already equipped to live holy and righteous.
Okay. What does all of this mean for you then? Listening to this, sitting with these ideas from this particular source.
Yeah, how does this perspective, this shift in focus from righteousness and holiness being things you do, things you try to attain, to them being an inherent nature, something imparted to you, maybe as a gift? How does that potentially change how you see yourself?
Yeah, consider the implications. If you were to fully embrace this idea, the idea that holiness and righteousness are a nature you already possess, rather than, say, a standard you're constantly striving and maybe failing to meet through your actions, what would that feel like?
It really raises an important question, doesn't it? What might the practical implications of living from that place, living from inherent nature? What might that actually look like day to day in your thoughts, your feelings, your decisions?
We've taken a deep dive today into a text presenting a pretty distinct view of holiness and righteousness. It definitely challenges the perhaps more common understanding by arguing they're not attained through effort or struggle.
No, instead it frames them as an inherent nature, something received through a spiritual rebirth.
The core idea, according to this source anyway, is a fundamental shift in identity. It's moving from trying to be holy and righteous
to understanding yourself as already being holy and righteous by nature.
And this devotional suggests that really getting this distinction, understanding it deep down, is key. Key to overcoming that sense of struggle in one's spiritual walk.
So maybe something to ponder as we finish up. If, as this source claims, righteousness truly is a nature you possess, a gift received at a specific point, how might allowing that understanding to really sink in, how might that practically influence your daily life?
Yeah, compared to maybe operating under the belief that it's something you must constantly earn or, maintain through your behavior.
Definitely food for thought.
Something for you to mull over. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
For more information on how you can grow spiritually using Rhapsody of Realities, please visit our website, www.rhapsodyofrealities.org, or you can also visit rin.rhapsodyofrealities.org/salvation. Thank you.